Hello, everybody. This is Craig of the Pacific War Channel. This is Echoes of War. I'm joined here by my co-host Gaurav. How are you?
Hey Greg, wonderful to be back here as usual, and looking forward to our good friends at the Taiping Rebellion.
Yeah, this is going to be another episode in our ongoing series covering the Taiping Rebellion. And before we jump right into it, I just want to remind the audience, especially for this series, you might want to consider checking us out on YouTube, as the geography is very, very difficult. It's actually nearly impossible to find a good map in most of these events, but we do have quite a few to show you, as well as really fantastic paintings from a very nice collection that was made after the Taiping Rebellion by some Qing authorities. They wanted to kind of glorify their victories over them. So please, if you can check us out on YouTube. And by this point, I think it's safe to say we're going to be on the Kings and Generals podcast YouTube channel. That's where you can find us. If
Yeah, I
not,
think we have about three of our long format series out already.
yeah. So the last one was the French and Indian War. Long format just came out over there. Actually, you know what? Yeah, this episode as a standalone might still be on my Pacific War channel because we're in a transition phase. But the long format, which my God, it might be 12 hours long, is going to be on that channel. It's going to be interesting to see how many people actually go through listening to a 12-hour podcast. But needless to
Isn't that a
say,
7 years war series that's going to
oh
come
yeah,
up once we finish?
definitely. Needless to say, if you want to further support the channel, please consider checking out the YouTube membership, which is growing. I want to say big thanks to all of you who've joined up over there. But you can still join the Patreon account as well at www.patreon.com/the Pacific War Channel. Both are identical in scope and in price. You get access to the exclusive podcast series, which is 35 episodes and ongoing. Get early access to all the content I make, and there's going to be a lot of early access content coming out very soon. My animator is working on what is going to be known as the campaign against Beiping and Tianjin. So that's the opening events of the Second Sino-Japanese War. It'll be a 5-part series for my YouTube channel. So it's a lot of ads coming out soon. And you get, of course, access to the polls, which are ongoing every month, usually in terms of what will be the next exclusive podcast series. But I do ask feedback for direction for the YouTube channel, for other podcasts, the ones I narrate for Kings and Generals and such. So yeah, a lot of goodies over there. Stating all of that, I think the best way to start this one out is I'm going to just put a generic map up that will honestly not be helpful for this episode. I had to literally go into a old book to find a map that might show somewhat of what we're going to be talking about today. So bear with me on this one, YouTube viewers. This is a very difficult event to cover from a geographical point of view because honestly, campaigns are simultaneously happening throughout multiple provinces in China. So actually, if you were looking at the map I currently have, you
I
can
think
see,
maybe let's just go, baby. Focus on one campaign instead of
of
going
course,
chronologically, because otherwise it's
yeah,
just going to get too messy.
I can only do as much as I can. It's a very messy thing. As you can see here, if you're looking at the Taiping control, the purple from 1857 to 1863, you can see it's an overlapping of Jiangxi, Fujian, Zhejiang, Anhui province, and then there was a good push towards in the direction of Shanghai. Um, there's still a lot of overlap that goes into Hubei, Hunan, and other places. The Taiping are everywhere, and they're simultaneously holding numerous fortresses. There's sieges going on every single month. It's pure anarchy, honestly, in China. But
And I think, as you mentioned in the previous episode of the Taiping Rebellion, that absolutely insane murdering and coups that took place.
yes, that's going to be at the forefront of this. So for those who are just jumping into this episode, this is going to be jarring. I have to admit, the way that I had initially tackled this series was kind of in storytelling fashion, because it really does come off well to tell it from the Taiping perspective as if it's a story, and it's full of all the classic Chinese drama. It really tries to play off like it's the Three Kingdoms 3 or something. So in our last episode, we talked about basically what was a bloody purge. Many of the kings are dead. And one of the only surviving kings, which was the flank king, Shu Dakai, he's departed. He's kind of fed up with basically the Nanjing clique. We'll call it, well, it's actually Tianjin. Of course, it's the heavenly Taiping kingdom, but we all call it Nanjing today. He left, and this placed Hong Xiuquan in a very difficult position.
And not to mention, for I think any listener who's just new, Shidakai, as you mentioned, was their most competent
Yes.
military leader with the most battle-hardened troops as well.
Oh, yes. And he just left to basically just go campaign on his own. He said he would do it on behalf of the Taiping, but he really was kind of just his own guy now. He was fed up. So he was obviously frightened by, the East, North, and the other kings. And yeah, so he didn't trust any of them. He didn't trust their officials. And there's going to be a lot more stuff going on. By this point, the Taiping fortunes had shifted quite dramatically. Uh, the era of their rapid victories and campaigns and their overwhelming triumphs is kind of coming to an end. They could no longer capitalize on their, we'll call it blitzkrieg like offensives. And now the Qing provincial armies are going to rally and start to reclaim some key strategic regions, particularly in the upper Yangtze Valley. Hong Xiuquan remained really isolated in Nanjing without his original allies to handle the essential, day-to-day leadership stuff. And as problematic as our late and great friend Yang Xiuqing had been, he was at least a competent organizer and tactician. So it was a loss that he is dead now. But on the opposing side, the Qing were able now to fully exploit all of the inner turmoil going on with the Taiping. Their primary siege camps were encircling Nanjing, but they had been destroyed. Oh, yeah.
I have a question. I think I remember when Shidakai made his final assault, right? Like before he had the fallout with Hong Xiuquan. He had, you had mentioned he sent a letter to the Qing that's like, we are dealing with an internal rebellion, please don't attack me. Was
Yes,
that like
it's
probably one of the most affirmative sources of intelligence that they could have got?
yeah, it was extremely stupid, especially from one of the top commanders. He was in a bad place.
Uh, I'm like, guys, you are technically in rebellion to your government. They're not going to get off the steam.
Yeah. I apologize for the quality of this, and this is the best that I got. But I'm going to be sharing. This map is from a very dated book, mind you. I mean, this book is from the 1970s, and it just kind of shows you the most inner defensive network of the Heavenly Kingdom that's in Nanjing. Please note that basically the Taiping fortified the countryside around Nanjing with multiple trench works, fortresses, all sorts of stuff. It's absolutely a fortress. It's very, very difficult to get to Nanjing, and even by a river, because this is mostly a riverine. From a logistical standpoint, it's mostly riverine warfare.
This would
I'm
be
just
with the
going.
Yangtze River and such, right? And its
Yeah,
basin. And
yeah.
when you mentioned fortresses that are surrounding Nanjing, is it kind of similar to how European major cities were also styled out at this time?
Yeah, I
Like,
guess you
for
could look
example,
at it
in
that way.
France, Strasbourg, Verdun, Paris, you had like a series of outlying forts as well before the primary city.
Yep. So it's basically any of the, because as you can imagine, Nanjing being the second capital of China, it's very immense, and it is also a walled city, very defendable. There's minor towns just outside of it. All of them have been dramatically turned into fortified camps. The bulk of the Taiping military forces, even though they're not the veterans, are around Nanjing. So you can think of it as kind of it's a tough nut to crack, and wherever you attack, they just start concentrating their defenders. So that's kind of the crux of it. In the last episode, there was a lot of attempts to try and get closer and closer to Nanjing, but it just doesn't work. And a lot of good Qing commanders have died in the process. But the primary siege camps that were erected against Nanjing, they've been destroyed in 1856 in the previous episode. And they were now, confronted by two major challenges. The first was that there was another uprising in North China, known as the Nanjing Rebellion. And actually, I can put back up my other map, I guess, because it does show over here. I can zoom in a bit. You can see in the blue part, the Nan rebels. This is basically the greatest expansion that they achieved. and we're going to talk a little bit about them in this episode. So the Nanjing Rebellion, it was disrupting communication lines from north to south, severely hindering coordination against the Taiping. The second issue, which I would say is not a small one, is the Second Opium War. Yes, which obviously is endangering, the eastern seaboard of all of China. And it's severed maritime access for the Qing dynasty, leaving regional commanders in the south and the central regions of China basically isolated on their own. They have to just figure out what they're doing by their lonesome. This is, as you can imagine, a great hurdle, being attacked by both Britain and France while you're facing the bloodiest civil war in human history. So, yeah, it's pretty bad for the Qing dynasty. Actually, financial records from this period reveal that Emperor Xinfang's treasuries were greatly diminished. The Qing court
And I
had...
think, I don't know if you mentioned it in the second episode, it was because they are fighting with the European powers who have the premier arms at this time in the world.
Yes.
The outdated Qing arms, they were looking to try to get to the United States as
Yes.
their arms supplier.
And as
Now
with
with
the
the
Taiping.
Yeah. And now with the sea cut off to them, good luck. You can just
This is the kind of funny thing. I had a segment I had to cut out of this because this episode was 12,000 words long in my notes, so I had to cut it a lot. The Americans do go to Nanjing to meet with the Taiping, and the Americans do have representatives in Beijing, but they chose not to trade with either side. I mean, they do trade a bit with the Qing in the end, but they chose not to trade, especially with the Taiping, because it was not in their interests to disrupt the current trade going on in China, which was dominated by Britain to the most point. This is the
and
same
right now
reason.
this would be pre-Civil War America, correct?
Yep. And actually, there's famous people from the Civil War that end up here, and vice versa. It's a very interesting time period, and the warfare is very similar. People who are very interested in the American Civil War and how war advanced and modernized during that period, same things are happening here in China. It's a very interesting comparison. And there was a YouTuber, Warhawk. I actually talked to him about this. He's probably the most knowledgeable person I've ever met in my life on the American Civil War. And he knows quite a bit about the Taiping Rebellion, and he had a lot of interesting information, especially about the trench warfare aspect of it and exploding mines under fortifications, because both wars, of course, saw that. But the Americans, they didn't want to disrupt the ongoing trade system. And the British, who were the ones who were actually making the decision in the end, the British, Americans, not so much the French, they were kind of on the fence about who they should support in the Civil War. They looked at the Taiping and it came down to one thing. We already abused the Qing dynasty, and they seemed to be playing ball when it came to trade at least a bit. Do we want to gamble with this new weird regime, even if it is so-called a Christian regime? Because they did take note that that these are Christian worshippers, so-called. They have a very weird version of Christianity, for that matter. They didn't, but in the end, they believed that the Taiping would have been a bad choice because the Taiping didn't respect property. I mean, they're proto-communists in a lot of way, and this scared the shit out of the Americans and the British, so they were led to not trade with them.
I guess it's sort of that saying, right? The known devil is better than the unknown angel.
Exactly. But the Americans were very, very close to trading with the Taiping, and they did limited trade with them. And there was a limited amount of Westerners who fought on behalf of the Taiping. I won't really get into it because it's insignificant in the greater scheme of things, but it did exist. Yeah, the Second Opium War is going on. It's causing all sorts of havoc, as you can imagine. And the treasury is all but depleted. The Qing court actually started halting orders for silk and porcelain, items, essential, for displaying the imperial splendor of Manchu. In addition, stipends for weddings and funerals amongst the Manchu banner troops were discontinued, and objects like golden bells, Buddha statues, and gold and silver items were melted down to produce coins. Desperation. The Qing court compelled officials to cut their staffs, halt repairs to palace structures, and by 1857, some imperial banner families were reduced to mere pounds of relief grain per month just to survive starvation. The emperor permitted his banner troops to draw from their own banks and rice reserves to protect military personnel from what was actually kind of an inflation crisis going on. Despite the economic hardships and adversaries on all sides, the Qing armies might have entirely crushed the Taiping during this chaotic phase, if not for the Qing leadership's rigid policy of executing captured veteran Taiping troops without any mercy. This left very little reason for people to abandon the Taiping cause, as you can imagine. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the aftermath of all the killing in Nanjing. Hong Xiuquan elevated his two brothers and also his sister, some children, some nephews, I think like 8 of them, and a lot of other family members, like distant cousins, basically anybody who was direct blood-related family members or in-laws.
Brilliant.
Were
Nepotism. Nepo babies at its finest.
exactly. He had just seen like his friends who had actually started at the very beginning, even in his town, basically trying to kill each other, and they're probably trying to figure out a way to kill him. Like Yang probably was. So he's pretty freaked out. His palace was managed entirely by women under his broad supervision. Reportedly, he had about 2,000 women divided into 3 groups: female ministers and bureaucrats, maids and attendants, and his immediate family members. It's just a harem. Can't stress it enough. Hong Xiuquan is really into his harem.
Just a fancy harem, like in name.
If you watch Chinese drama series on the Taiping Rebellion, the one that I actually showed a clip of from the last episode, they portray it as if like there's these entire units of female soldiers and they're led by female captains. It's not true. There was a symbolic female guard.
Honestly, it right now just reminds me of Caligula's palace.
Yes.
I mean, like not with a brothel, but
yeah. The last group I had mentioned included, consorts, and according to his son, Tangui, Hong had about 88 consorts in Nanjing. Tangui was aged at about 9 in 1857. He was deemed too old for the palace, and he was moved to an outer residence where he would receive 4 wives. He was prohibited from seeing his mother or sisters due to strict paternal regulations.
Wait. So he's 9 with 4 wives and can't see his own mom and sis.
Yeah, the wives thing is, of course, bizarre. But I will remind the audience that the idea of removing your heir apparent from the family is something that actually the Japanese did as well. Emperor Hirohito, for example, famously wasn't allowed to see his dad.
Is there a logic? I mean, I'm
for
sorry,
the Japanese.
First time I've heard of it.
For the Japanese, Hirohito was to be educated by the greatest naval, the greatest admiral, and the greatest general that they had produced. They thought that this would teach him. To be honest, one of the things that was directed towards Hirohito was to be shown what was the common plight of the people of Japan, so that he would have a relationship with them and not be, like stuck in an ivory tower, so to say. Didn't work out that way. It didn't really work out that way, but it's an interesting thing we can actually talk about at some point. I did a whole series on Emperor Hirohito and his responsibility in the China War and the Greater Pacific War, because he was very engaged in it, and he oversaw a lot of the bad stuff that happened. No one really knew that until after his death. But yeah, so it's not like bizarre as a practice for a royal family to have their kids not be with the parents. But Hong's going to take this a step further. He decreed that at age 4, his sons could no longer have any close contact with their older sisters. At 7, they could no longer sleep in their mothers' or their consorts' beds, and they must keep 10 feet away from their sisters and learn independent bathing. By 9, they had to avoid their grandmothers. And the sister separation also followed similar rules. After 5, they must never be touched by their brothers. And after 9, they had to stay entirely amongst women and never see their younger brothers. Again, this has to do with the Taiping segregating the sexes.
You did mention like the way they organize themselves, right? Like sergeants also have to look out for groups, and even people were like grouped together on their profession. as you
Yeah.
mentioned.
And I know I'm speaking to probably a 99% Western audience. You have to remember, this is Confucian China. This is against the social fabric. Like, this is very bizarre for the Han Chinese population. But anyways, it's kind of a great sociology experiment if you think about it. And again, if people feel it sounds a little bit like communism, yeah, it's pretty much like proto-communism in a lot of ways. There's a lot of aspects that are communist to it.
Communist monarchy.
Well, yeah, just like Stalin. I mean, Hong Xiuquan is not, he's not practicing what he preaches. None of the officials, like the officials, are living luxuriously. It's just like that. So in 1857, a year after all the assassinations, were going on there, Hong issued his only known official publication, which was titled in English "Poems by the Heavenly Father." This revealed a focus on order and harmony amongst the hundreds of concubines and maids in his vast harem. He explained heavenly principles, urging women to please their master and follow his rules. It blended fantastic ideas and fanatical
Is it
beliefs.
is this a heavenly kingdom on religion or something, or a sex cult or something?
As any religious cult, what was it? I think it was Joe Rogan who said all cults lead to this, kind of just like it's one guy at the top and he's banging everybody's wives. Every cult ends up like this. So yeah.
Fair enough.
Oh my god, it makes you think of I forget the name of the guy who was involved with the Tiger King. Oh, that guy had a crazy sex cult, but I desist. This all blends really fantastic and fanatical ideas. And it was leading to Hong Xiuquan's decline. He prioritized personal religious experiences, and he truly believed that he needed to do things to ascend to heaven. And he believed that ascending to heaven was more important than overthrowing the Manchu. This is kind of where the entire rationale for the rebellion falls apart. He suddenly becomes too preoccupied with this. And this is why I believe
it's a
he's a true
wall
believer.
fast, right?
Yeah.
It's like a wall fast of their entire rebellion.
Yeah. Any government structure was managed by some member of his family. This mostly was under the brothers, so that's Hong Rengfa and Hong Rengfu. Later, captured Taiping commander, and that was General Li Sucheng, would tell Zheng Guofan this quote: "In Nanjing, there was no one at court to carry on the government. The morale of the soldiers and the people was broken and troubled. The military leaders were greatly displeased with the Hong brothers, as both men were deficient in talent and had no plans." So that's just kind of testimony to just go ahead and say that the two brothers of Hong here were idiots. They're really incompetent. And in my series that goes into more depth than this for the Fall and Rise of China series, because I did do I think it was 14 episodes in all, I kind of went into the drama behind it, and yeah, the brothers were looked quite down upon as being incompetent fools. Now, Shu Dakai. I want to talk a little bit about his campaign. Hong and his entire family, they lacked anyone who could really unify everything. Hong Renfa and Renfu were described as deficient in talent and military tactics. They were also known to be obstinately bent on carrying out their own views, and they were obsessed with the notion that heaven would support them in everything that they did. Good luck with that. Actually, I'm supposed to see, what map are we on right now? Okay, that's fine to have this map. When the Qing court learned of Shu Dakai's departure, they instructed Zheng Guofan to invite him to join. Shu Dakai refused to surrender and marched his army through Jiangxi, Zhejiang, and Fujian. Then he went westwards into Hunan. From Hunan, he tried entering Sichuan province. So I just need to actually look at my map. We're going to go a little bit down here so you can see a little bit. I guess yeah. So if you can see how far he's going, this is an older map. What is known as Guizhou is basically what he would enter into, and he go a bit north, and then there's Sichuan.
It's like he just wants to be as far as physically
I know,
away.
yeah. I mean, I think he was. I would assume the plan was to just form his own camp and just hold out. So he tries to enter Sichuan. Shidakai conducted a ceaseless, exhausting campaign across what was essentially 15 provinces over about 6,000 miles. Initially seeking a permanent base, then he kind of had to focus on survival because he was being encircled. Countless troops fell ill, they died, or they deserted him. By June, cornered and exhausted, he walked into a pursuing Qing general's encampment and he chose to surrender himself. The reason why he did so was he was seeking to secure pardons for about 2,000 of his Taiping veterans. And at this point, I would very much like to bring up a fantastic piece of artwork. So bear with me, everybody. Just trying to find it. Yes,
This
it's
is
this.
our eternal problem, folks. We have so many tabs open.
So this is part of a collection of 10 paintings that were done by Qing officials to glorify having just defeated the Taiping Rebellion. They've been a bit restored with color in that. They're fantastic to look at. They're very detailed. There's minute little details everywhere, and I'll actually zoom in to kind of show it, but I'll just tell a little bit more of the story. So he wants a pardon for his 2,000 Taiping veterans. He prepared by having his 5 wives commit suicide and having his son drowned, sparing them the agony and shame of being taken by the Qing. While this sounds horrific, what the Qing would have done to them would have been worse, I have to admit. It would have been bad. He was interrogated for over 6 months by Liu Bingjiang, who had actually directed the defenses of Changsha when we were talking about that. And during that event, actually, that had been the event that killed the West King. Shidakai was going to be executed slowly via dismemberment, and his 2,000 loyal followers were led to a local temple where they were all slaughtered. Now, while that seems to be the real story, the painting actually depicts a different kind of story. Apparently, Shidakai was trying to flee and escape, and we can
Like
see it
on a
here.
riverine barge, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's what it's.
It's right in this corner. That's supposedly a Shidakai trying to escape, and you can see Qing forces. That's actually the Zhang army probably attacking him. But yeah, the official history states that he had actually surrendered himself. But this painting does tell another story, and I have to admit, I had to read multiple books on the Taiping Rebellion, and none of them tell the same story. It's actually it's very bound by oral history, even though it's mid-19th century. It's difficult to follow. It's very hard to learn the history of the Taiping Rebellion. So
You were correct, though. The painting is pretty detailed, like especially at
yeah.
the foliage and everything around it.
Yeah, I honestly I love the set of 10 paintings is exquisite. It's very very nice. It's very good artwork. Meanwhile, back in Nanjing, Hong Xiuquan's appointment of kin as officials completely backfired, as we can imagine. He had intended to reestablish organization by causing disorganization and chaos. Sorry, but this had caused disorganization and chaos. He appointed Meng De as his chief of staff. Meng, from administrative staff, handled providing women for the Heavenly King's harem per Taiping documents, but he lacked any military experience. Despite his nominal central administration and military authority, he held no real influence over the courts or the armies. Hong's brothers used positions to amass great wealth and live luxuriously, leaving field commanders to basically just make decisions on their own. So, commanders' attitudes towards Nanjing appointees appear in such remarks made by General Li Xuecheng, as when he was taken prisoner by Zheng Guofan later on, he had this to say. There was no one at court to carry on the government ongoings, the morale of the soldiers and the people were broken, and they were quite troubled. So this is reminiscent of the quote I actually gave previously. From his view, the military leaders were completely dissatisfied with the Hong brothers, and they were very distrustful of Meng. And he had this to say. A great favorite of the Heavenly King, and who had not ever been outside of the capital for that matter, he was alongside his second in command, Li Kaifeng, and both men were without ability. Moreover, they were kept in hand by the Hong brothers, who were incompetent.
So to him, it's the incompetent keeping even more incompetent friends in power.
Exactly. Obviously, the Taiping are facing a major crisis. Li Xuchang wrote another passage suggesting that there was a potential collapse that was going to happen in 1858. I'll read that passage. It's a little bit lengthy. The feeling of the people has undergone a great change. Government affairs were in disorder, and each man was pursuing his own course. The sovereign had become mistrustful of others. The affairs between the kings had so alarmed him that he was distrustful of ministers, of other surnames, and he put his confidence in only his own family and relations. There was a unanimous desire at this time to separate. However, they did not dare to separate on their own, since they had heard that whenever the Qing generals and soldiers captured Guangxi men, they decapitated them, not sparing a single one. Let's remember the original Taiping are from Guangxi province. Hence, they banded closer together instead of dispersing. Had the Qing dynasty been willing at this early date to spare Guangxi men, a breakup would have probably taken place then and there.
I guess that's why Caesar and other dictators throughout history, they're smart enough, they know when to use clemency and pardons.
Exactly. The Qing, I mean, for anyone who knows the history of the Qing dynasty, the Qing were just terrible rulers. Their decline is because of their own choices. Anyways, it's a very revealing passage, I'd say. The Hong brothers and Meng Duan's inability to manage campaigns forced Hong Xiuquan to grant military leaders more of a free hand, creating new titles and positions within the Taiping hierarchy. The first two key men to emerge back in 1856 were Chen Yucheng and Li Xucheng, titled Second Chief Commandant and Deputy Commandant. Left alone by the useless Taiping court, they made their own strategic decisions and they coordinated for self-preservation mostly.
It feels a bit reminiscent to like a similar situation to the Qing, because as the new model armies of the provincial governors are coming into fore, like as you mentioned, right, which is the precursor to the warlord era of China. It's almost like probably not at the same scale, but that sounds like the same thing's happening here.
It's exactly like that. Excuse me. The Qing are grasping at straws the same way because their military structure is it's abysmal. It's so backwards. The Green Standard Army is a joke. The only thing that's more of a joke than the Green Standard Army is, of course, the Manchu Banner Army, which is very ceremonial and it's just very outdated. We will be talking about the new armies springing up and how effective they are, because they are certainly making waves. So the military situation for the Taiping was critical. Control over the Yangtze had been lost to Zheng Guofan's Jiang army. And actually, I do have a picture of his army. One sec. It's a little bit small, so I'll just zoom in. So that's an actual picture of the Zhang army. And in December of 1856, Wuhan would be recovered by the Qing, threatening Taiping control over the southern Yangtze areas. At this point, I wonder if I should put up my other map. Yes, perhaps I will put up. I do apologize for the quality. This is from an old 1970s book, but I assure you this is one of the best maps I've ever found of this time period. So I'll leave this up for now. So the two Taiping commanders had met in January of 1857 at a conference in Nanjing to coordinate a campaign. This resulted in a joint strategy to strengthen the Taiping military position in the Yangtze area. Neither commander had played a large role in the Taiping campaigns before taking the great city of Nanjing. Chen Yucheng was far too young for an active role during the march from Guangxi to Nanjing. At Nanjing, he was appointed corps superintendent in charge of provisions for the Taiping Fourth Army. It was kind of a desk job, to be honest. By 1854, he had petitioned for combat duty, and in June, he was one of those who occupied Wuchang. He distinguished himself as the 38th commander, then the 13th senior secretary commanding the Taiping Rear 13th Army and the Front 4th Army of river troops. His military achievements and personal bravery...
I'll just say I got completely confused about the numbers in the units for a moment.
There's no to get into all of like the ranks would be insane. Well, we can't get into it, but yeah, his military achievements and his personal bravery earned him quite a lot of fame amongst the Taiping and notoriety with the Qing even, who targeted him as a key commander. The other man who we've been talking about, Li Xucheng, a fellow villager of Chen Yucheng, fought during the march from Guangxi to Nanjing, but he had not been promoted to important positions till later on. At Nanjing, he became assistant to the Taiping leader Hu Aiquang, then appointed to Yang Xiuqing as a corps general, and then later a corps superintendent, leading troops in 1853. Before the entire power struggle situation, Li was sent with other officers to Jianjiang in Guangxi. After that, he commanded at Tongcheng in Anhui province, facing a struggle when about 3,000 of his men were isolated by Qing forces. They were actually surrounded by like 10,000 Qing troops in over 100 camps, but he managed to break out by cooperating with Chen Yucheng, and they even cooperated with Yan rebels. And I'll take this time to excuse me, speak a little bit about the Yan rebels. So we're going to go back to this map. The area of northern Anhui, along the borders of Henan, Shandong, and Jiangsu, was under Yan control. They started as local corps during the 1840s and 1850s because of the disarray going on, and they were basically just guys trying to rise up to defend their villages against bandits and raids, because bandits were aplenty in this day. By the mid 1850s, they banded into a regional force via a secret society, and they had local gentry support. They held formidable cavalry and units, and they used defense in depth for campaigns into neighboring areas. The anti-Qing rebels, as anti-Qing rebels, they cooperated with the Taiping when possible. Little coordination existed in reality between the Yan and Taiping due to their differing goals, we'll say. The Yan were local rebels with very little program or any political purpose beyond just dominating and exploiting their own area. They lacked any ambition to establish a new dynasty or, let's say a proto-Marxist revolution like the Taiping were doing. The Taiping had very little interest in local bandits, unwilling to submit to their faith. So obviously they're going to run into some, heated conflict. At the rebellion start in Guangxi, Taiping, basically they alienated secret societies and bandits as, not being useful for their cause. Yang Xiuqing in Nanjing maintained this policy going forward. But after central command kind of broke down, military-focused leaders like Li Xuchang and others would pursue joint action with the Yan rebels because they saw them as very useful.
And I guess it's easy to work with them when you have a common enemy in the Qing dynasty's central regime.
Yep. And at this point, I have another little exquisite painting we'll put up. The first significant joint action occurred in early 1856 when Southern Hui Nian leader Li Qiaozhou joined Li Xuchang for campaigns in Zhejiang. There was a crisis at Tongcheng. Li contacted Li Qiaozhou and the Northern Nian leader Zhang Ruoxing. Zhang pledged cooperation, claiming 1 million yen were actually under him. This forced the Qing in northern Anhui onto a defensive posture, easing pressure on Li Xuchang. The alliance raised Li's status amongst the Taiping, earning him a promotion. The joint campaigns took several Hui area cities between 1857 and 1859. Cooperation remained purely military-based, and it was very short-lived, never extending beyond the Hui area, which was under nominal control under, the Nan. The Nan were kind of like a federation of autonomous units, and this was completely incompatible with the Taiping ideology, preventing any real integration. Southern Yan, like the leader Li Qiaozhou, his chief collaborators, they also proved to be quite untrustworthy. They were not Guangxi men. And there's a whole thing about how people from Guangxi just don't trust people outside of that province. We won't get into it. There's a thing there. The Yan would also often surrender to the Qing to try and survive. And that obviously really didn't please the Taiping. So Li would ascribe their surrender to being undisciplined. And he actually had one quote in reference to the leader I'd mentioned. Li Qiaozhou's troops were a disorderly lot. They were constantly troubling the people and plundering any city that was taken. And when this could not be effected, they would vent their rage on the peoples themselves. So Li chastised the assistant generals Li would chastise all these generals, and he was very ashamed to meet with them. And he was very ashamed when they would submit to the Qing. Li was particularly dissatisfied with Zhang Ruoxing, who, quote, his men were only interested in promotions. but not serving when they were called upon. In the end, Li blamed Nian disobedience for all of the failed Taiping campaigns. He was basically just handing the buck over to them, saying it was the Nian's fault. However, joint actions did lead to Taiping victories in the central Yangtze region, aiding their cause. Joint actions also prompted the Nian to hit Qing supply lines, contributing to a major victory at Tongchang on February the 24th, 1857. And that's actually this painting right here. Actually, one sec, there's two paintings. This might be... Sorry, no, this is a painting afterwards, but this does show a battle at Tongchang. Excuse me. Of the Nian attempted a western campaign, but they lost ground in Hubei. Major thrusts also occurred in April and September of 1857, and later on in May, but they were quite frustrated when they came into contact with the Xiang army and other Qing forces. The Nian would end up retreating to northern Anhui. Meanwhile, Li Xuchang acquired a base closer to Nanjing, establishing supply lines, and he was taking a role just defending the Nanjing region. I'll just say here, the painting in question is actually a Qing victory over the Nian rebels at Tongchang, which occurs a bit later. But if you zoom in, you can see the exquisite amount of detail. You see the fortress here, them storming, going through, how they get across the walls using the ladders, the exquisite trench network, the cannons,
Honestly,
the artillery.
Even the smoke actually is pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
Near the cannons.
Yeah, it's these paintings are very well done. There's 10 of them at all, and then they tell very specific Qing victories. There's obviously none showing the Taiping victories, but I feel it gives a feel for what these battles were like. So I like using them because there's no better paintings, honestly. Okay, I'm just going to pull up out of my hundreds of tabs here this map. So, though the Taiping Nian joint operation slowed the Xiang army advance into Hunan, Zhang Guofan's strategic plan proved very effective, with forces advancing steadily in the Yangtze area. At this point, actually, might be useful. I just got to close a few of these to look at my other map. But yeah, put this map up for now. And again, I apologize for how grainy it might be. In May of 1858, the Xiang contingents recovered Zhejiang. Oh, and I believe I do have a painting. Yeah, I have a painting about the recovery of Zhejiang. So that's this painting right here, the last Taiping strategic base in the central part of Yangtze. It provided resources from Jiangxi and Hunan, plus major recruitment for the Taiping. From Zhejiang, Zheng's army prepared to march into the province of Anhui. Zheng sought to advance into the upper Yangtze region to try and strangle the Taiping, while other Qing forces rebuilt the 1856 camps surrounding Nanjing. Northern and southern blockading camps were then rebuilt, and this would be done under the Manchu generals He Chen and Zhang Guoliang. Zhang Guoliang is actually a very important figure at this time. By late 1857, their forces would be marching on Jianqiang, held by the Taiping, all the way back since 1853. Just gonna see. I do not believe I was unable to find any picture for that one. But yes, I will go back to my map. So to counter this, the Taiping held a military conference. Alongside Li Xuchang and Chen Yuchang, generals Yang Fuqing and Li Shuxiang gained prominence. Yang, who was, to make this more complicated, a cousin of Yang Xuqing, escaped the slaughter by campaigning in Jiangxi. Li Xuxiang was a cousin to Li Xuchang, and actually he fought under him in 1858. And he commanded the southern forces in Anhui. The Taiping government relied on these generals' loyalty, not Meng Duan or other useless Nanjing administrators. These are kind of the guys actually getting shit done, as they say. In August of 1858, as the Qing were continuing to strangle Nanjing, Hong Xiuquan gave his commanders new titles and assignments. Since the way back when, with the Yong'an campaign, Taiping military were they were divided into forward, rear, central, and left armies. Chen Yuchang became chief general of the forward army. This was originally Fang Yongchan's position. Li Xuechang was given the rear army. Yang Fuqing was given the center army, which would be shared with Meng Duan, commanding forces from Nanjing, which he obviously can't do. And Li Xuxian would be given the left army, which was previously Xu Dakai's. At the conference, Li Xuecheng called for unified action, and I have a quote here. I then wrote to the garrison generals of the different places, calling on all officers of the Heavenly Dynasty to hold a council of war on the appointed day at Songyang near Anjing. The generals and officers of the various places responded to my call. We each took an oath that we would support each other and agreed to join forces in the conflict before us. So, as the conference ends, Chen Yucheng marched on Xuecheng, Liu Zhou, Xu Zhou, and then he would link up with Li Xuecheng at the Anhui Jiangsu border, where they were going to hit Qing forces at Wuxi and Pukou. There, they would be defeating a northern Qing camp that was currently strangling Nanjing. The Taiping would break the northern half of the Qing blockading forces, thereby ending the major threat to Nanjing. This is the plan going forward. So
now the Qing needs siege camps version 3.
Yep. However, these forces the Taiping defeated at the northern blockade were just regular Qing forces. Fresh from victory, the Taiping were now going to be facing the Xiang army, who are marching into Anhui at this time, led by Li Shubin and Zheng Guofan's brother, Zheng Guohua. Their Xiang army threatened the entire Taiping position in Anhui province as a whole. Chen Yucheng would rush his army to defend, followed by Li Xuecheng. Major battles would break out in November of 1858, and it would result in the complete annihilation of the Xiang army forces there, and the deaths of Li Shubin and Zheng Guohua. The Taiping reaffirmed their control over Anhui. And I do want to provide one painting. Oh, no, that is not the right one. I think it is this painting. This is a painting of combat in Jiangpu and Pukou, but it's pretty representative of what's going on here. So, Zhang Guofan suffered a terrible setback, and a personal one for that matter. Chen Yucheng and Li Xuecheng recaptured almost all of the lost Anhui territories before they parted ways. Chen Yucheng would then establish a base in northern and western Anhui around Anqing, while Li took a eastern section closer to Nanjing. Because Li was nearer to Nanjing, he asserted more control and he introduced order to all of the chaotic business going on in the capital. Per his own account, he requested of the Heavenly King, quote, to select men according to talent, act laws for the relief of the people, promulgate strict decrees, renovate court discipline, force rewards and punishments, treat the people with compassion, reduce taxes in grain and money. The response was he was demoted. And then he was promoted back to his position. So that's how Hong Xiuquan went about that.
Well, at least he wasn't executed.
Yeah. Demotion had no real effect on field commanders because the people who are trying to operate at Nanjing really don't have any actual authority over what's going on in campaigns. So it didn't really matter. Later in 1858, during a siege of Nanjing, Li Xuecheng would go to the capital and he would claim he was doing so to reestablish order. He was quite convinced that the Heavenly King needed to save their capital, and to do so they had to collect external forces for relief. Each leader then was to hold their own supply areas until Nanjing's messengers demanded the army's help break another blockade, and that was going to be at Jiangpu and Pukou. Actually, that's the painting we're looking at right now. Okay, so I'm going to go back to so many tabs. Here we go. This one. So, during 1856 to 1859, the Taiping were more or less on the defensive still. Military actions were almost always by commanders working amongst themselves, disregarding anything coming out of Nanjing. Commanders thought militarily. They were no longer really concerned with the great Taiping ideology, dying for, the revolutionary purpose, so to say. This made each commander very short-sighted, focusing primarily on their own regions. They coordinated only during immediate threats, proving capable of defeating regular Qing and even some of, Zhang Guofan's forces. As we saw, his brother was killed with the bits of the Xiang army. No attempt by the Taiping leaders was made to regain the initiative, however. Central control, disintegration just completely crumbled everything. Supply transport to Nanjing really became an issue as Zheng Guofan attacked all the riverways, especially on the Yangtze. Earlier, Nanjing enjoyed the Yangtze dominion as its region. Supplies were simply pouring in from 50 to 100 miles inland. Yet by around 1856, the Yangtze and other lakes were severed from Nanjing, causing large losses in communication and the supply network. Though the Taiping held numerous important Yangtze cities and even parts of the waterway, well, the blockades were really denying much of it to them. Hey guys, this is Craig from the Pacific War Channel. Please don't forget to check out my YouTube membership or my Patreon account over at www.patreon.com/thepacificwarchannel, where you can join the ranks and gain access to a hell of a lot of goodies. At the base minimum, you get access to the exclusive monthly podcast, early access to all of my content, voting rights for what subjects I will tackle next, and at higher tiers, I have much more goodies to come. So please click that link and check it out. And now we're going to be changing focus a little bit because we have to introduce a new character. So at the very beginning of this series, and I'm going to put up my old map. Too many. There it is. There we go. The very first episode we talked about this character, Hong Rengan, cousin to Hong Xiuquan. Hong Rengan had
given how the events have gone, I completely forgot until you mentioned him that he existed.
Yeah. So for Hong Rengan, in Hong Kong, he was hearing about all of this. And as you can imagine, when he heard, oh yeah, there's this guy called the Heavenly King, and it's your cousin, pretty intrigued. He decided he was going to visit this new great capital known as Tianjin, which I'm just referring to as Nanjing, just so it doesn't confuse people. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. The story of how he gets to Nanjing, it took him a year. It's an incredible journey, and it's a story of its own. He had to get into disguise and do all sorts of weird things. It honestly kind of reminds me of Frodo and Sam going to Mordor. It really does seem like that. I can't get into it.
Jeez.
So, long story.
Where did he start? Where did he start from again?
So let me look at this map. I believe that this map. Does this one have it? Well, he would start from Hong Kong. I guess it doesn't. There is a map that shows his.
Okay, but he started from Hong Kong, right? If you just take that,
yeah. And he goes by
probably
land.
takes the most indirect land route, you could say.
Yeah, it took him a year. I can't get into it, but the reason why it took so long is because if you imagine that the only way to go anywhere fast was through the waterways, there's battles over every key transportation hub, and it's either the Qing or bandits or the Taiping that are fighting, and he is trying to just portray himself as a neutral person who won't be captured and killed. If the Qing came across him, they would think he's a Taiping rebel and they would kill him. If the Taiping came across him and he started saying, hey, I'm a cousin of the Heavenly King, they'd probably kill him because he'd be annoyed. So he goes to like all these inns. He's putting a cloak on. He's hiding. He's captured a few times. I won't get into it, but the last time he's captured, it's by a Taiping commander who doesn't believe he is who he says he is, but nonetheless brings him to the capital. So he arrives in April. It's April the 22nd of 1859. So he's arriving to the second capital of China, which is exquisite at this point. It's rich with temples, government offices, trading houses. It's a wide metropolis. But he notices it's completely designed now for war. It's fortified. There's cannons everywhere. When the Taiping took over Nanjing, they burnt down the Taoist and Buddhist monasteries, creating their own kind of Jerusalem, we'll call it. He arrives, and Hong Xiuquan has already retreated from public life. He's spending all of his days behind his palace walls. Almost no one meets with him, save for his harem, his women. Hong Rengan's reunion with his cousin is bittersweet. It's been over 8 years since they actually last seen each other. When Hong Xiuquan was failing his exams and having mental breakdown.
And then God spoke to him, right?
Yeah. Hong Rengan had heard many rumors. Despite the Manchu weakness against the Europeans, Nanjing at this point was nearly entirely encircled, and it was bleeding. The Taiping armies left the city in 3 separate foraging expeditions, and you heard that right, foraging expeditions. That's how bad things are getting. While the Qing were concentrating on strangling their provisions. Hong Xiuquan's seclusion hindered any coherent government in their capital, so he needed a trusted advisor. And lo and behold, look who had showed up. It was Hong Regan. So Hong Xiuquan showered his cousin immediately with titles, promoting him swiftly. Within just 2 weeks, Hong Regan earned the title of being a king, breaking Hong Xiuquan's promise that he would never elect new kings after they had all died. His title translates in English to founder of the dynasty and loyal military advisor and upholder of heaven and keeper of order in the court.
You
Long
gotta love like
Chinese.
Chinese history with these flowery
Exquisite,
titles.
yeah. He was known colloquially as the Shield King. Hong Rengan joined the Taiping military echelon charged with the entire Nanjing civil government. That's how bad things were. Hey, cousin, you're here. Take over the entire government. Why not? Mind you, Hong Rengan was an educated person. So he basically became Yang Xuqing 2.0, and he was second only to the Heavenly King. So, pretty unexpected, I would say. Everybody who was in the current administration was very angry. They're very jealous that this random dude just showed up and he got this title. Someone who was particularly resentful was Li Shicheng, who was commanding the Nanjing defenses at the time. Now, let's look at this. Li Shicheng had proved very capable and he was very trustworthy, but he was not a king. Watching this outsider promoted above him after years of service bred a lot of jealousy. Li would eventually gain...
It's I'm sorry if I just make this comparison.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Marshal Suchet with Napoleon. Like, he was well regarded, proven himself exceptional, part of like Napoleon's circle, but it took bloody forever for the guy to become a marshal.
Yeah. Li Shicheng would eventually earn something known as the Loyal King rank months later, but that came far too late. His resentment towards Hong Rengan only grew. So Hong Xiuquan, aware of dissatisfaction, called for a full congregation to honor the Shield King's appointment. Announced all decisions would be referred to, to the Shield King and his sole authority. As the crowds showed their disapproval, Hong Rengan tried to decline all the positions, but Hong Xiuquan whispered to him, "All will be well. The wave that crashes with great force soon spends itself and leaves peace." So, I guess, whatever. Hong Rengan accepted the seal. He preached to the crowd, criticized the late Yang Xuqing's policies, and he offered improvements. In his words of the reaction of the crowd, "They saw that I could stand in front of a multitude and hold forth flawlessly on doctrinal issues, and so they accepted me as their model of wisdom." I'm sure that they didn't, but whatever. Hong Rengan's vision for a new Taiping state. So it was clear Hong Rengan was going to be commanding the Taiping followers. He needed to get their loyalty. And this meant more than spiritual salvation, like Hong Xiuquan was kind of obsessed with. So Hong Rengan understood that these people needed more than to be told they had to get away to get into heaven. They needed earthly rewards, like promises of a better state in life. So he sought long-lasting structure for the future Taiping government and society, weaving Chinese tradition with knowledge of Western industrial societies. Because let's remember, Hong Rengan was educated by some priests from the West, so he had some knowledge of Western practices. He infused a prototype ethnic nationalism that had been unseen in China since the Manchu invasion. His first major proclamation fanned ethnic resentment towards the Manchu, calling people to, quote, "rejuvenate China and resist the northern barbarians in order to wipe out the humiliations of over 200 years. We mouth their language, we live together with their members, and our people suffer from their vileness of the Manchu dogs." So, this cause really did, not just resonate with the Taiping, but anybody else in China at that time.
It's kind of like, again, a wall fast from what Hong Xiuquan made in his 1857 speech about just wanting to ascend to heaven rather than the fight against the Manchu.
Exactly. Actually, an American in Shanghai who was a witness to some of this, he had this to say: Americans are too firmly attached to the principles on which their government was founded and has flourished to refuse sympathy for a heroic people battling against foreign thraldom. So, from this American man's viewpoint, he believed that the Manchu were dominating the Han, and I mean, that actually really is the truth of it, and he had some sympathy for them. Han Rengan hashed out a vision of a new Taiping state in a document titled A New Work for the Aid of the Government. Traditional dynastic views that held China as the center of the world, you know, the pinnacle of civilization, and that barbarians were beneath them, was something that he realized annoyed foreigners. So Han Rengan knew he needed to change this so that nations like Britain, for example, who were militarily more powerful and very proud, would deal with them. So he encouraged dropping the notion of calling Westerners barbarians, and he expressed towards Westerners the equality, friendship, harmony, and all that.
Is it like two two reasons? One, because of his exposure already to the Western
Yes.
civilization through the missionaries, and also he's a bit more pragmatic in realizing what they might need in the long term.
Even at this point, the Qing dynasty, like the Manchu officials, are still referring to Westerners as barbarians. Who
And
and
we've seen that
yeah,
in your
yeah,
uh, Opium Wars video.
exactly. And they're doing the old "we don't trade with the barbarians; they pay us tribute." That's how they present their trade deals and all that. And Hong Regan is very educated; he knows this, and he knows that they could maybe get the Westerners to join their side and trade with them. So he's going for that route. Han Regan's, Hong Kong experience showed China was just one state amongst many, many others. And he had been studying actually 19th century powers. He believed Christianity was the key to Western strength. Protestant nations like Britain, the United States, Germany, Scandinavian nations, they seem to be the strongest and most prosperous, followed by the weaker French Catholics and Orthodox Russians, clinging to what he believed to be miracles and mysticism. Views on Islam and Buddhism, he thought they were both quite weak, abiding, he saw them as nations that were either being colonized or on the verge of being colonized. He saw the Manchus like the Persian Empire. He thought that they, people under them accepted slave like status too easily. The most powerful nation in his eyes was Britain, who had been, to his knowledge, ruling for like 1,000 years, longer than the Chinese
I
dynasties
mean,
that he
at
knew.
this at this point, it's not a joke. Britain is the most powerful nation in
Yeah.
the world.
Britain's strength came from an intelligent populace that emulated laws. So he had, that's the way he viewed it. He had great admiration for the United States, which he called the flowery flag country, because, obviously the American flag looks very weird to the Chinese. It's interesting, from a visual point of view. He called the Americans the most righteous and wealthy country of all, but one that doesn't encroach upon her neighboring countries. Yeah, well, not yet. we'll see, during the turn of the 19th century. The United States will do a little bit of encroaching, we'll say that much. But yeah, he had views on American democracy. He thought, all virtuous people should choose leaders and set policy. Han Rengan listed Western friends to be, those like British missionary James Legge, Swedish missionary Theodore Hamburg. These are people he's met, of course, and countless Americans in Shanghai. And he proposed using them as connections for Western cooperation. So he's a forward-thinking guy. He urged tapping global industrial, the global industrial economy to strengthen their cause. He learned that Western steamships were becoming the thing that actually built up a nation and built their wealth. He also noted Japan, unlike the Qing dynasty, opened up to trade and, quote, certainly became skillful in their future. So, yeah, it's kind of
Wow.
foreshadowing.
Especially since this is like what, almost 15 years before the Meiji Restoration takes
Yeah.
place.
But he was a very learned man. And current events were on his mind. We'll say that much. So, Hanrigan's ideas envisioned China as a modern industrial power. Much would be adopted by future leaders from Hanrigan's ideas. Like, for example, those fighting in Taiping, Li Hangjiang, for example. He would be thinking very similar things. To establish central administration, financial military authority, Hanrigan needed military commanders' backing. Expecting none from Li Xiuquan, he secured support from others like Chen Yuzhang, who seemed willing to accept his kind of system. Shortly after he received the Shield King title, Chen Yuzhang and Yu Xiuquan were made kings. Chen as Ying Wang, the brave king, and Li as Zhong Wang, the loyal king. These appointments placated a lot of jealousy, still towards Hong Rengan. These men, who were long independent, weren't eager for subordination, but the three became kind of the triumvirate of the Taiping, we'll call it. That's actually a great way to put it. They're the three guys that are the heads of what's really going on. Li
But is
Shuchong,
it so? Is it official or unofficial? Because then I'm gonna say it's a first or second triumvirate.
I guess it's the second, because I guess you could
All
think of
right.
the kings as the first. Yeah, the first kings were the first. Li Shucheng was the most ambitious Taiping leader. He really did seek glory. His command right now was protecting Nanjing, and he positioned himself as the Heavenly King's protector, becoming something like the new Yang Xuqing in a lot of ways. He very much disliked Hong Rengan, and he disliked all of his ideas. I think he's just being a stubborn asshole. Chen Yucheng, however, accepted Hong Rengan's political leadership, and he became quite a supporter under him. Beyond the field command, Chen aided the government reorganization. He joined Hong Rengan's board for new state examinations, for example. Hong Rengan wanted law-based government, stressing education for the Taiping people. So, just going to go ahead and say it. Hong Rengan is kind of a gleaming jewel right now. He's doing good things. One of his first proclamations was to revamp the examination system, blending Confucian classics like the four books and the five classics with Taiping Christian texts. Though none of these texts apparently survive, scholars assume the Confucian principles were heavily revised. It's like, anything the CCP does today when it comes to history. A lot of changing of events and stuff. Han Rengan carried imperial tradition, the elite characterized by ranks, titles, labor exemption. But while examinations and privileges resembled the imperial systems, the substance really differed. Imperial gentry based on Confucian studies, Han Rengan wanted more, of a Christian gentry class. New exams focused on official service qualifications. He clarified Hong Xiuquan's visions to align with traditional Christian literature, because I have to reiterate, Hong Xiuquan never really read the real Bible. He kind of had a messed up version that he read, like a pamphlet kind of, and not just.
Sorry, he just can't get that image of now him like half dazed, half mentally broken down, reading a pamphlet and then starting the
Yeah.
most bloody rebellion in human history.
Yeah, that's in a nutshell. So you have to imagine a lot of Westerners who came to see the Taiping capital were utterly confused as to what was going on with the Christian stuff. Like it didn't make much sense. And Hong Rengan knew that, so he was like basically trying to present it in a good light to the foreigners as well, because a lot of the foreigners were weirded out by it. He suggested permitting foreign missionaries and technical advisors to Nanjing, establishing kind of a westernization approach. Many would come. American Baptist T.P. Crawford, J.L. Holmes, J. Roberts, Hartwell. For the British, there was Wesleyan Josiah Cox. But by 1860, the Second Opium War was coming to an end, and there was a treaty. So the Western powers, for lack of better words, when the treaty was signed ending the Second Opium War, all the Western powers officially sided with the Qing. That was kind of a secret clause in the treaty. So yeah, that dashed Hong Rengan's hopes of ever truly getting Western allies. Meanwhile, with Chen Yucheng's alliance, absent. Li Shucheng is kind of absent from this. Hong Rengan couldn't really overcome the resistance to his authority. Regardless, he tried to take on a leading role in military planning. Strategies that he implemented were initially successful. So, Obviously, the first thing he wanted to do was relieve Nanjing. So, when Hong Xiuquan and his cousin spoke in their early years, they envisioned a kingdom excluding the north, founded in Nanjing, and they would dominate the 7 southern provinces. This was akin to kind of the Ming dynasty, abandoning the Qing expanse. But after taking Nanjing, the Taiping tried seizing the south and north, and they failed to do so. Now, the situation was dire. Most of the southern territory was kind of being lost. They did hold a strategic Anqing base, which was upstream, but the Qing ended up retaking Zhenjiang. I'm just gotta check my maps. Do I have? I don't believe I have anything for Zhenjiang. No. I will continue. The Qing established encampments with tens of thousands, guarding points north and south of Nanjing, maintaining the siege. There were Qing forces working alongside their counterparts, such as Prince Seng's Northern Army. The Southern camp dug in 10 days after the fall of Nanjing to the Taiping, and they had been holding their ground continuously. Zhang Guoliang commanded the south, and the Manchu general Hu Qian commanded the north. So there's basically 2 clusters holding this major blockade against Nanjing. Zhang Guoliang's forces were far too large for the Taiping to do a sortie and scatter them, but they were also too strong for the besieged. Unfortunately, they were in a bit of we'll call it a stalemate. The forces were too large for the Taiping to come out and defeat them, but they weren't big enough to actually overwhelm Nanjing. So, the 3 years after the 1856 kind of lifting of the siege, we'll say, the Qing had rebuilt. They dug a 45-mile trench below Nanjing with over 100 guard camps blocking access. And I want to see, do I have a painting? I think I have one. Oh, yes. This somewhat shows you a little bit of what it looked like, the siege. So they dug that 45-mile trench below Nanjing with over 100 guards to camp all the blocking access. Hu Qian and Zhang Guoliang prepared a final assault they hoped would crush the capital. But Hong Rengan presented a bold plan to relieve Nanjing. He sent a small expeditionary force in a wide arc beyond the Qing rear in Zhejiang province to attack the weakly defended town of Hangzhou. It's about 150 miles southeast of Nanjing, and it happened to be the supply line for the southern Qing camp. With all their forces concentrated around Nanjing, Hangzhou was quite lightly defended. The Qing would need to transfer troops from their encampments to lift the siege. Per the plan, they recalled the roving armies of Chen Yucheng and Li Shucheng's younger cousin, who was known as the Attending King. We won't get into that. As they were doing their foraging campaign. Once the Qing around Nanjing were beginning to thin out, the force at Hangzhou secretly retreated as the combined brave, loyal, and Attending King's armies swept from all 3 sides to crush the weakened camps, raising the siege. Even Li Shucheng agreed that the plan might break the siege altogether, but he questioned its lasting effect. If it reconcentrated the Taiping, basically, the Taiping were still stuck in Nanjing. The Qing would just encircle them again, was what he was arguing. Thus, Hong Rengan revealed a fully revised strategy. The rice-growing southern provinces of Sichuan to the west, Great Wall to the north, over 1,000 miles from Nanjing, would be held. But in the east, the rice-growing southern provinces, including Sichuan, were to be coveted because obviously they need food for their cause. But over to the east were very wealthy places like Suzhou and Hangzhou, and they had sea access. So if they struck east, they might get access to the sea, and then they might be able to get greater access to any provisions they might need, especially if they can get some Westerners on their side. So after they lifted the siege, which is actually kind of shown somewhat in this painting, they started to conquer cities between Nanjing and Suzhou rather swiftly. I think I can bring up my map now. Although, actually, this map might still be better. Yeah, I'll use this map. So, sea access would ensure, supplies, arms, wealth, more recruits. If they were successful in this eastern campaign, they might gain Western allies. And they sought to use Suzhou and Hangzhou as basically something to produce wealth. to buy what they hoped would be 20 steam-powered ships from the Shanghai foreigners. With naval forces, they could patrol the
If
Yangtze
only
completely
the
unopposed.
Japanese army in World War II began to use steamships for logistics.
Yeah. So their belief was that if they had these steamships, they would have, naval patrols to patrol the Yangtze, and they'd be unopposed. They'd be able to attack the southern coast, along Fujian, Guangdong, all the way to Hong Kong. And then they could march on Jiangxi, Hunan, Hubei, maybe seize Hankou, solidify, Taiping control over the great Yangtze region. And this would effectively cut the Qing Empire in two. From there, they can consolidate the south, take Sichuan, Shaanxi, realize Hong Xiuquan and Hong Rengan's dream of, the former Southern Ming dynasty, as it would have been called back when. Beijing in the north, they thought would just starve, which they're not exactly right about. Historically in China, you could starve out the north, but now that new crops from the New World, like corn, had come into northern China, they weren't as reliant on the rice crops in the south. So yes and no. Definitely, if they took over the southern part of China, they would have much, much firmer base of which they could fight the Qing. So the Qing would eventually lose. So in that, they were right, but it wouldn't starve them. So on February the 10th of 1860, the loyal king left Nanjing with about 6,000 handpicked men disguised in Qing uniforms stolen from slain enemies. They were They coordinated between the Green Standard and the Brave Armies and local militias. The coordination between the Green Standard army units and the militias was pretty weak. So the loyal king's forces managed to see several garrisons along the way before looping around to hit Hangzhou. And I just want to see if I have a painting of the Hangzhou battle. I believe I do. Yes, I do. This is actually a kind of crude drawing of the event. I know it's a little hard to see, but that is that. So the main Taiping force was battering the front gate of Hangzhou using sapers and tunnels, and they managed to blast a hole in one of its walls by March 19th. They unleashed absolute hell in the city as its untrained militia routed, fleeing their homes and to the neighboring towns. The leaders of Hangzhou likewise just abandoned their offices, taking their bodyguards with them, with many ransacking the city before they fled. Li Shicheng's
So
men.
locals are like attacked from two fronts.
Yeah. Li Shicheng's men fought against the local residents who stood their ground, and the local women did as moral instructions prescribed. They began to kill themselves en masse before being taken. So Manchu, it's tradition for the Manchu to just kill themselves rather than being taken by the enemy. The women hung
And I think
themselves.
the Manchu women would have remembered what happened when Nanjing was taken.
Yeah. The Taiping, that's what they do to Manchu. So the women, they would hang themselves, poison themselves, stab themselves, and throw themselves into wells to drown. The Manchu commander at Hangzhou fled with his troops, because he wasn't going to kill himself, I guess, back to a inner garrison holding out against the fierce Taiping invaders. Li's men were unable to break into the Manchu garrison for over 6 days, so he abandoned the attack and he began to retreat back to Nanjing. He had accomplished his objective, and the plan would work out perfectly. Zhang Guoliang received reports of the attack on Hangzhou without any clear indication of the size of the Taiping force there. He shifted about a quarter of his total siege forces to relieve Hangzhou, and as a result, the loyal king and his men took their Qing disguises yet again, slipped past Zhang Guoliang's men. So when Zhang's forces arrived to Hangzhou, they found no Taiping, nor any civilian government. So they looted the city. So the city got looted twice.
I thought that was like it was not supposed to be the new armies that was supposed to be like looters. Like I remember you said it was the Banner and the Green Standard Army.
Yeah. So comes April, the main Taiping armies of the brave and attending kings went to the outskirts of Nanjing to join up with the loyal king coming in, and then they threw their combined weight against the weakest point of the southern Qing encampment. The southern camp fell apart in a complete rout as 100,000 Taiping overran them from 3 different directions. So complete, utter massacre. I have an interesting. I'll put it up anyways. This is from a movie. So this is from the movie Jet Li's in called The Warlords, and it's actually depicting what is a guy fighting for the Qing, beating up some Taiping, but this is somewhat representative of like just the chaos of these battles, I find. Because I kind of liked it, so I put it up. So yeah.
100,000 men rushing through one camp in 3 directions just sounds like chaos.
These cavalry smashed into the Qing rear lines, crushing the men under their defensive works. Thousands were cut down with their bodies left in trenches that they had already dug. The waterways apparently were overflowing with corpses everywhere. The routed Qing dropped their weapons as they fled, but the Taiping pursued them for many weeks, cutting more and more of them down. Soon the Taiping overran the city of Danyang, which was about 45 miles to the east of Nanjing. General He Chun committed suicide like a good Manchu by eating raw opium. It's kind of a coward's way out in a lot of ways, but whatever. To each his own. Zhang Guoliang drowned himself while trying. Well, sorry, excuse me. Zhang Guoliang actually drowned trying to escape from Danyang. So, yeah. Two of their greatest generals.
So not like one of those Korean generals who intentionally drowned himself in the Indian War. Yeah. I think Sinrip.
Yeah. So, two of the greatest generals have fallen. In the spring of 1860, suddenly the Taipings came out like an absolute scourge from their capital, marching east. Guess I'll put back up this. I'm just going to have to close some of these that I've opened up. So many paintings. So the scourge is coming east. The local militias simply fled before them. They were too great number. Jiangsu province was swarmed. Countless cities fell without a single fight. By mid-May, the Taiping captured Jiangzhou, and a few days later, Wuxi. Then the Taiping plucked one of the greatest cities in all of China. And I do have a painting for this one. Sorry, it's another picture, mind you.
Just one thing I'm going to add about that battle that just took place. I think you should just talk about the supposed losses that of the 180,000 men in that main Qing siege camp, 140,000 were supposed to have been killed or captured.
Yeah. Actually, if you're watching this on YouTube, I can put up this map. This is a map of the population decline during the Taiping Rebellion. Those are percentages. So you could see.
Oh, okay. So you're saying the province of Guangdong literally lost like 90% of its population?
Yeah, you can see the absolute devastation. It is, when you look at the number, the supposed number is 33 million people died in this conflict. Like, it is.
That's supposed to be 10% of China's population as well.
It is in absolute insanity. So if you're on YouTube watching this, you can see it's broken down by not actually provinces. They're kind of like smaller parts of provinces to show each one's population decline. And yeah, wherever the Taiping are, it's like 50% or more reduction. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And I'm just going to put this picture back up. So, yeah. Suzhou held a population of 2 million, providing them with a vast amount of recruits and plunder for the Taiping. The Taiping momentum was unbreakable. Suzhou simply opened up the gates to them. For those who were in the path of the Taiping, the choice was always the same. Be brave and fight to protect your homes, or you cut off your Manchu coup and you just join them. Many peasants tried to appease both sides by growing their hair very long on top, while the Taiping would take over, but they kept their Manchu braid wound up underneath their long hair in case the Qing ever came back. So it's kind of like, you have two hats and you're just trying to put the hat on when the opposing army's around.
Insurance policy, as I call it.
Oh, yeah. So soon the Taiping spread past Jiangsu to Zhejiang, forcing countless to flee to the protection of the international city of Shanghai, where many Westerners are. Rumors spread to those in Shanghai that an army of 100,000 Taiping were going to march upon them, and that they had a flotilla of 10,000 boats. And it would take them just 3 days to get to the city.
Would the boats be escorted by artillery or some protection?
It's rudimentary. These are like barges, not very large riverine. They had some cannons on them, but I wouldn't. It's not.
So it's at least a bit better than that French invasion plan during the 7 Years' War.
Yes, of course. That's Nothing is dumber than that. Operation Sea Lion Zero. But yeah, the treaty port of Shanghai held about 500,000 Chinese inhabitants, and a figure that was growing daily with all the refugees coming in. Shanghai was divided into four sections. The east going to Jiangsu province, the south was the old Chinese city, with a circular defensive wall about 25 feet high, governed by the Qing, holding most of the Shanghai population. To the north was the French and British concessions, and to the east was the Suzhou Creek, where past was the American concession. The foreign population numbered around 2,000 settled people, and shipping crews numbering around 2,000 or so also. The British dominated the community, second by the French, leaving the Americans as a minority. It was not a beautiful city. Countless newcomers, were told it was the El Dorado of wealth in China, for hope and fortune, and then they would come to find it a dirty, overcrowded settlement with ill-built houses reeking.
So
Yeah.
it just reminded me of that Indiana Jones scene from the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. When
Yeah,
they get to that city, right? It's supposed to be like wealth, and everyone thought gold, but it was knowledge.
true. Here's a quote. There were overcrowded settlements, ill-built houses reeking with impurities and fevers and vile stenches. One missionary said of the city, "It was one of the filthiest in the world I've seen. I've never seen anything to compare to its dirt and filth. It surpasses everything." Not good reputation. Shanghai had access to the sea and the Yangtze River, making it an ideal point of trade for tea and silk from China's interior. Shanghai was built specifically for the purpose of dominating the China trade. As the Taiping edged down the river, British authorities in Shanghai issued an injunction from trading with the Taiping rebels, and they set fear into the foreign community that their immensely profitable commerce was about to be completely destroyed. The top ranking British official in Shanghai was none other than Frederick Bruce, the younger brother of Lord Elgin. So people who know their Second Opium War history, yes. After Bruce was kind of an idiot, by the way. After failing, to do his job, which was to get the Qing to abide by the treaty, Elgin, he left his brother in charge to finish up the work and manage Shanghai. Because of his experiences, he sought to walk a very fine line in his new role, and he was determined to remain neutral towards the Civil War, which is very hard to do. He issued the trade injunction, as I said, believing that any trade with the Taiping would breach the neutrality. He also simultaneously tried to avoid aiding the Qing, but the British had interests with the Qing after signing the treaty, so the Qing knew how to twist his arm. The Qing had an official named Wu Xu, who hounded Bruce for British support in defending Shanghai from a possible Taiping attack. Wu Xu warned if the Taiping took Shanghai, it would shut down all trade with Britain. So Bruce was pretty scared of this. And Bruce had actually heard rumors about all the horrible things that had happened in Hangzhou by the hands of Liu Shicheng's men. So he thought the same would happen in Shanghai. And it was not just the Taiping who were a threat. There were legions of renegade Qing forces who had taken up residence in Shanghai, having fled from Suzhou and Hangzhou. Bruce would actually write, "The defeated imperialists have revenged themselves from their defeat by pillaging the defensive villages on their line of retreat. The beaten troops, the victorious insurgents, and the vagabonds of the city itself all join in plundering the wealthy and respectable inhabitants." So yeah, the Qing were just looting everywhere as well. The Taiping were on their way, so weighing his options, Bruce decided it was in Britain's moral interest and duty to protect Shanghai, but not just the foreign settlements, but also the Chinese city under the Qing civil government. He made it clear any British defense of Shanghai would strictly be limited to the city itself. Wu Xu tried to press Bruce that a preemptive British strike against, let's say, Suzhou might halt the Taiping altogether. It'd be a great idea, but Bruce rejected this immediately. The French, however, heard reports that another French Catholic missionary had been murdered by the Taiping. They decided to rally a force of about 3,000 men to march on Suzhou. But Bruce was able to scuttle their mission. The British merchants began to hound Bruce to mount a sturdy defense of the city, but Bruce wanted to wait. Probably for, a few months, because he needed authority from Britain to do anything. Thus, in the meantime, Bruce began calling up volunteers, and he only had a handful of cannons that were dragged up to the walls. and a few hundred, inexperienced civilians mostly and sailors to try and defend against basically what they were being told was 100,000 Taiping about to storm Shanghai.
And that was pretty interesting, at least to the end, because now I know definitely where the next setup is going to start from.
For those who are frustrated by the geography of China and all that, our next episodes are actually going to involve Western forces fighting the Taiping in the region of Shanghai, we'll call it. It's going to be extremely exciting, drama-infused stuff with a lot of weird characters who are from the American Civil War. Very interesting pirate-like people. It's going to be a lot of
Any
fun.
names?
Townsend is a guy who's very famous at this point. He's quite a renegade. We'll say that much. We're going to be talking a lot about Townsend. And then there's going to be a guy who became known as Chinese Gordon. He's going to be an interesting character, but he's not. Anyways, he's in the future. Before I let the audience go, I think it's in your best interest to check us out on YouTube, or you can probably watch the video on Spotify. I just got the authority to put videos on Spotify, so I can try to do that there. Really think it's great, just to look down, see the geography, the maps, paintings. You can just go back to your Excel files, whatever you're doing at the office. Before I leave you, also, if you'd like to further support the channel, consider checking out the YouTube membership or the Patreon account at www.patreon.com/PacificWar channel. By joining either of these, you get access to the exclusive podcast series, get early access to all the content I make, and voting rights for the subjects I'll tackle next. Thank you, Gaurav, for being a hostage yet again to, the heavenly doctrine of the Heavenly King. Oh, you're muted. Excuse me.
I was thinking, I'm enjoying this. It's a heavenly experience.
Yeah. And at the end of the series, I will prescribe. I will give a few sources for books. If anyone's interested in reading this, I can give like a book that's entertaining, less about the overall what's going on in the world. I can give a book that actually talks about the Second Opium War and the Taiping Rebellion together, which is the way that this should be done, mind you. It makes a lot more sense if you talk about both simultaneously and such. There's a ton of literature on it, and it is available in English. Although I have a few Chinese copies that you can use AI to translate, and they're really good. The Chinese copies are probably the best. Stating all that, until next time.